Greetings and salutations, and thank you for clicking on this video. This is video number 5 in our series called Beginner's Guide to the Desktop. We're going to talk about software management this time around, and we're going to focus on Linux Mint. We are also not going to be using a terminal to install and manage our software. We're going to concentrate on the graphic tools that come installed on the Linux Mint distribution. Now, the reason why I'm using Linux Mint is because over the last year or so, pretty much every client that I have worked with through Easy Linux has requested Linux Mint. This seems to be the distribution for new users to come to these days. Linux Mint is based on Ubuntu. It's not really based on Ubuntu as much as it is developed alongside Ubuntu, but there are many distributions that are based on Ubuntu and use the Ubuntu system to one degree or another. Examples would be Elementary OS, KDE Neon, Zorin, and many, many more. Linux Lite as well. They are based on Ubuntu. And what that means is that they have access to Ubuntu's software repositories, which is one of the reasons that many distributions are based on Ubuntu. And that's because Ubuntu has about 30,000 applications in there. So when you install your Linux Mint system or your Ubuntu system or anything based on Ubuntu, you have a vast amount of software available to you at your fingertips for free. You can just install it at any time. So what I have done, I have spun up a brand new Linux Mint installation, and this is as Linux Mint comes as soon as it's installed. I have updated it, put a new background on there, tweak the fonts, that sort of thing. But it's pretty much a clean slate. If you would install Linux Mint, this is what it's going to look like. So as we roll along here, I'm going to demonstrate how to get software installed on your system. Now, the first thing that is difficult for new users to understand about Linux is the concept of repositories, because if you are a computer user that's used to working in the Windows environment, for instance, usually with Windows what you do is you go to a web page, you find a program you want, and you download an installer file like an MSI or an EXE, and then you click on that file and a wizard opens up and it installs on your computer. And you do this one at a time. Linux doesn't really work that way. You can download package files and install them, but that's actually quite rare. Most of the time, the software that you will install on your system is going to come from a repository. Repositories are special servers that are maintained by the various Linux distributions, and those repositories contain software that are known to work with that system. It's been tested and it has been inspected to make sure that there's no malware or viruses in there, and it's going to work with whatever version of Linux and whatever version of that distribution you are running right now. So you can pretty much install anything from the main repositories without fear of it breaking your system or destabilizing it. That does not mean that all of the software that are in the repositories is going to work with your computer. It just means it won't break it. So you may have to try several different pieces of software before you find one that does what you need it to do with your hardware. But it's nice to have choices, and that's really cool. Now, if everything came from the repositories, it would be totally cool. But lots of software in Linux also comes from third-party repositories, and in the Ubuntu world, we have personal package archives, which are repositories that are maintained by developers themselves. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we roll along. And yes, there are some developers out there that offer their software in a Deb file, which is a package file that contains software, and Deb goes back to the Debian operating system. Ubuntu is based on Debian, uses a lot of Debian tools, and then all of Ubuntu's children, they also use those Debian tools to install packages. So, before we get too far into it, let's open up the software manager in Linux Mint, which is a really nice application. And we're going to take a quick look around here. We'll talk about the basics of how you install software, and this would be with the repositories that you already have hooked up to the system when you boot it up. And in the case of Linux Mint, we will have the Linux Mint repositories and the Ubuntu repositories as well. So that's a lot of software. And here's where you can discover that software. It is in categories. So for instance, we have Internet here, and you can click on that. And they have lots of browsers and other tools that are internet-based and so forth. So you can just look around here and feel free to try whatever you like. You can also search for software. You can search for software by a keyword in the description or by the actual name of the software. So we're going to search for HTOP, which is a groovy little program that we talked about in the last video I posted. Not in this series, but the last video I posted. And if you want to install it on your system, you could find it here. And then we're going to double click on that, and it's going to open up a page. And on that page, we are going to get screenshots, a description, and the Linux Mint community rates these applications. So you can check out what people have to say about it as well, which is very useful because, like I said, not every application that is in the Ubuntu and Linux Mint repositories is top-notch grade A software. It's just there. So if you want to install, real simple, just click install, and now we are installing HTOP. So this application goes out and it downloads it from the repositories, and it's going to put it on the machine. And while it's installing, we could search for more applications and we can put it on the system. So if you just started playing around with Linux Mint, I would suggest that you kind of stick to this application at first, because it really can't get you into too much trouble, and you can play around and find software that you're looking for. So we will come back to the software manager in a little while here. The next thing that we need to talk about are third-party repositories and personal package archives. These are available in the Ubuntu ecosystem, and essentially what they are repositories that you can hook up to your computer to get applications that are not in the main repositories, or you might want to get a more up-to-date version of the applications that are in the repositories. And sometimes personal package archives are really the best place to look for more updated software. Each developer that develops for Ubuntu usually has a PPA that has the very latest version. So let's look at our software sources here. And we're going to open up the software sources application. You do need to have administrator privileges to get in here, and we'll look at these repositories and how they're hooked up. So in Linux Mint, when we open up the software sources, you see that we have the main repositories for Linux Mint and Ubuntu, and then we can choose a mirror if we want to, which would be a location that was close to us that had a really fast internet speed, and just clicking on that will start it looking for the closest, fastest mirror to you. This is really the first thing that you need to do after you install Linux Mint. Now I already have that set up, so we're not going to do anything more with that. And now you see that we have PPAs. And PPAs are personal package archives. So we also have additional repositories, and we'll get into that in just a few moments here. I'm going to show you a little bit about that, but we want to concentrate on PPAs. Also here you see authentication keys. Every now and again, to attach a repository, you will need to add an authentication key. That's very rare, but it usually happens with specialized software. For instance, if you want the very latest Spotify client, you have to add their repository, and there are instructions on how to do that. So let's look at PPAs first. So if we want to install something from a PPA, first of all, let's find a program to install. So I'm going to open up Firefox here, and I'm going to do a search for Simple Screen Recorder. And go ahead and make this a little bigger so it's easier for everybody to see, including me. And we'll just look for that web page. Got some ads up front. There it is. Simple Screen Recorder Wikipedia. We have the Launchpad page. We have the official site. That's the one we want. And make that one a little bigger too. This tells you all about Simple Screen Recorder, which is developed by a fellow named Martin Barrett. And it is not available in the Ubuntu repositories, but if you want to do screencasting, I highly recommend it. And scroll down here and he's got information on how to install it on a lot of different operating systems. Right up front here you will see information on installing this on Ubuntu based systems using his archive, his personal package archive. And he has instructions here on how to do this in a terminal. Many developers, when they post their personal package archive information, will have these commands listed. And to tell you the truth, this is actually the easiest way to do it. But if you're really uncomfortable with a terminal, I'm going to show you how to do it in software sources. So what we're concerned with is this part right here. Okay, because that is the address to the PPA. And we're going to copy that. And we're going to switch to software sources. And we're going to say we want to add a new PPA. We're going to paste this in here. It gives you an example. So paste. And then the system is going to go off. And it's going to tell us about the PPA. And this is just the information that Martin himself has posted, and if you decide that you actually want to add it, you click OK. And there it is. It is now added to the system. The system doesn't know the software that's contained in that archive is there yet. So what we need to do is update the cache. And this usually takes just a couple of seconds. Now what that did was it went out and read all of the information in the repositories and looked for updates. So that is in there now. And we are going to open up Software Manager again. Oop, type that in correctly. Software Manager does take a couple of seconds to load. So don't be alarmed if on your system it takes a little while to actually load up. It just has a lot of information to go through. And now that we have updated the system, I should be able to go in here and search and find Simple Screen Recorder. That should be enough. Let's see if it pulls it up. Yep, there's Simple Screen Recorder right there. So I can double click on that. And there's all the information. And I'm going to tell the system I want to install it. So now we are installing Simple Screen Recorder. On that search, you notice that we had another file available to us, and this one right here. And we are going to install that as well. And this is a file that will allow you to capture games. So if you're running OpenGL games and you want to do Let's Play videos, there's a way to do it right there. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. Why not? I don't usually do Let's Play videos, but no reason not to have it in the system. So that is how you install software from a PPA, and we did it completely graphically. I'm going to go ahead and close the Software Manager. I'm going to show you another tool here. Software Manager is really cool, but there are way more options that you can do with software, and for that there's a more advanced tool that comes with Linux Mint, and it's called Synaptic. Synaptic Package Manager is a Debian application that is available on any Debian based system. Ubuntu is based on Debian, And it is my favorite way to manage software on a Linux computer graphically, because there is just so much that you can do with it. And that's the first time we've opened it, so you'll get that little window there, and here's what it looks like. No, it is not as cool looking as the software manager, and it actually, if you're using this for the first time, it might seem a little cryptic. But it works pretty much the same way. We have categories over here, so you can look through categories that are in the repos. And right now, this is all of the applications that are available to the system here on this list. And so we can, for instance, do a search. Let's just do a search for simple screen. And you notice that it pops right up and Simple Screen Recorder shows up. And with this little box right here highlighted right there, that means that it's actually installed on our system. It's pretty cool, huh? So we also have access here to the repositories. So it opens up the software sources. And you can pretty much do all the managing that you need to do. So let's go back to our old friend HTOP here, because I want to show you something important. When you remove a piece of software using Software Manager, it just removes the software. It doesn't take the configuration files and things like that with it. So if we kind of switch over here real quick to our thing here, we have install, which we've done now with 2 applications. And then I've got remove, and next to it I've got purge. There is a difference between removing an application and purging an application. Removing means that you just remove the application itself. When you purge it, you take the configuration files with it. It's almost like it was never there. Now, even after you've purged an application, you may still see some configuration files lurking in your home folder somewhere. We're talking about on the system. So let us get rid of HTOP. And when I right-click on it, I can mark it for reinstallation, I can mark it for removal, or I can mark it for complete removal. And if I mark it for complete removal, that means that it is going to be removed, including configuration files. So let's apply. And Synaptic does its thing. And we're done. Then Synaptic is going to reload itself. Now, one of the things to keep in mind here is that the Linux Mint Update Manager, when it's running, uses Synaptic in the background. Also, when you are running the software manager, it's actually using apt tools and Synaptic in the background, because all of these graphical applications are just a front end for the deeper system applications that you can access directly from the terminal, which is known as apt. So you can't have more than one of these applications at once. It usually won't let you do that, and it makes the system somewhat angry. Just little point there to keep in mind as we do this. Now, what's really cool about Synaptic is that we can install a bunch of applications at once, and we don't have to search for each one. So let's see here. Let's go ahead and we will reinstall HTOP. So I mark that for installation. And I'm going to come up here. I'm going to find another application to install. Let's grsync, for instance. Okay, and it found it. Now we'll mark that for installation. And then I am going to find another one. Let's look for another utility I like, BleachBit. Mark for installation. Now, Linux Mint comes with Samba running, or at least Linux Mint 17.3, which is a network sharing. That is a program that allows you to share with other computers on a network, and it's set up and it's actually running, but I don't use Samba, so I want to remove it from the system just so it's not running in the background. So I can come in here and now I can say I want to mark that for complete removal, and that's going to take Samba off the system. You can just keep going like this. You can go on, and you've created this list of changes that you want the Synaptic Package Manager to do, and then all you do is click Apply, and it will give you a list, and it'll show you what needs to be installed. and off it goes. Now it's going to go download all that software, it's going to uninstall Samba, and when it's done, it should reload itself. As you are working with Synaptic Package Manager, you may on occasion click on a program and it will come up and bring up a list of other things that need to be installed to make that run. Those are called dependencies. And the apt system that runs under Synaptic tries to keep track of all the dependencies that any particular program needs, because that's the way Linux works. A programmer can rely on other programs to make things run. So every now and again, you're going to see that programs need other programs to actually work. In that case, it should work just fine, but once in a while, for some reason or the other, you don't get all the dependencies and a program doesn't work, or there might be a recommended application that you need to install that program. Another thing that Synaptic does before we leave Synaptic is, let's say that you have an application that is misbehaving. It's not working right. So for this instance, I'm going to put in Firefox, and you're having all kinds of problems with Firefox. Well, sometimes reinstalling that application can fix the problem. So we're going to mark that for reinstallation. And now we're going to apply. Now what this is going to do is it's going to reinstall Firefox. And once it's done, it's going to kind of like be a fresh install. But you're not going to lose your bookmarks and things like that. We're just reinstalling the application. We are not doing anything to Firefox like removing everything that you put into it. So there you go. We reinstalled Firefox. There is much, much more to Synaptic, and it has a lot of very powerful features on it. And I would suggest strongly that you check out the documentation on the Synaptic Package Manager to learn more about it. Okay, so the next thing we have on our list, we've talked about personal package archives, and we're going to kind of talk about our third-party repositories here, because what we're going to do is we're going to do a direct download of Deb files to install on our system. Some developers choose to package their software in downloadable files, kind of like what you're used to with Windows, and then you go and download this file, and then you can install it on your system. So let's go get a Deb. Open Firefox back up here. Just trying to not have too many applications at once. I open at once. I don't want the screen to be visually confusing. We're going to look for a program called Ocean Audio, which is a little audio editor. And we're going to click on Ocean Audio. All right. Make that a little bigger so it's easier to see. We're going to download. And you see that Ocean Audio is available for a lot of different kinds of operating systems. We have a Windows version there. We have a version that works on Debian and Ubuntu. And then we have a version that is specifically for Linux Mint and Ubuntu 14.04. And since we are using Ubuntu, or rather Linux Mint 17.3, which is based on Ubuntu 14.04, this would be the package for us. So let us go ahead and open that up. No, I don't want to open it. I want to save it. Let's try that one more time, shall we? Yeah, 64-bit Deb package. Make sure we're clicking on the right one. Okay, we will save the file. Okay, I wanted to make sure, because it said open. I wanted to make sure I was saving. I didn't want to automatically open anything. It kind of threw me for a loop there. Okay, so our file is downloaded. It's a very small package, and we can go look for it. I'm going to show you a trick about Firefox and Linux Mint toward the end of this video. So I think it's going to be the last thing I show you. So that's your prize for sticking around. Alright, so it's in downloads. there's our Deb file. And in Linux Mint, to open it, we just double click on it. And this will open another tool called the GDebi Package Installer, which is actually one of my very favorite pieces of software in Linux, because it is so efficient at what it does, and it does such a great job. Now, in Ubuntu proper, they usually do not give you GDebi. It's not installed. So they want you to use their Ubuntu software application. Believe me, if you're running Ubuntu, get GDebi and use it to install your Deb files. You will thank yourself. So if I click on Install Package, it should let me in, and you notice that it said it would have to install one more package from the repositories to make this work. If the Deb package in question is the wrong version for your operating system, or if the Deb package has problems, it will alert you. It will not let you install it. So make sure that you are downloading the proper Deb for your operating system, whether that be Ubuntu 14.04 or 16.04 or something like that, okay? So we have just installed a Deb file. And it should appear in the menu if I do a search. Yep, there it is. It's installed. Okay, the next thing that we're going to talk about are third-party repositories. And I'm not going to hook up a repository and then go get the application. I'm going to show you how a lot of these developers do that, because this time around, we're going to download the Google Chrome browser, which comes to us in a Deb package. And this will demonstrate a couple of points here. So make sure that we're on the right page. That one should do fine. Download Google Chrome. A lot of software that is proprietary is distributed for Linux just this way. See, yes, Google Chrome is based on the open source Chromium browser, but it does have some proprietary bits in it. So therefore, Google makes it so we can get that. Now, up there at the top of that page, you'll notice that it defaulted to a 64-bit Deb, which should be the right one. I want to save the file, thank you. And it should download very quickly. It's already here. Okay, so we can go ahead and close the browser. And now I'm going to go through that process one more time for you guys. So now we'll install Google Chrome. Same deal. It's analyzing the file. And it tells us that it's Google Chrome stable. It's looking for dependencies. Says we've got to install an extra package. If you want the details, well, here's how you look. It'll tell you what needs to be installed. We're going to go ahead and let the system go ahead and install this. Unfortunately, Google Chrome doesn't work well in virtual machines. There's a way to fix that. So I'm not going to actually open the browser, but we'll just verify that it showed up and it's actually there. You can't use hardware acceleration with Google Chrome. For some reason or other in VirtualBox. It depends on a lot of things. Martin Barrett, who writes Simple Screen Recorder, sent me a message and told me what that was. I've forgotten. He said there was a way to fix it. Okay, so the package is installed. As soon as it gets through getting itself together there, it should offer us the ability to remove the package. But I'm going to show you how to remove the packages here in just a few moments. Okay, so Google Chrome is installed on the machine. Go ahead and close that folder up. And we are going to look and see if it's here. Yep, Google Chrome is installed. Wonderful. Now I want to show you something, because this is a really good example of the next thing I want to talk about, and that is third-party repositories. Remember, it does take the application a little while to open up. But I'm just here because I want to get to software sources. And we're going to go down to additional repositories. Now look here, we have Google installed. And that happened when we installed that particular package files, which means that we have Google, and it also installed our authentication key so that the system knows that it's a safe repository. When installing software that has a repository hooked up to it like Google, you really need to trust it, okay? Because they use public keys. So, for instance, if you're going to install Spotify, then you would have to add your keys first, and then you would add the repository, and then you would update the system, and then you would be able to install the latest Spotify client. I'm not going to go through that process. There are lots of really good instructions on how to do that on the web if you want to install Spotify. Just look for install Spotify in Ubuntu, and they'll take you step by step. And they do that in the terminal. You can also add repositories here, and you can add keys as well, but I'm not going to go through all of that because really, honestly, it's pretty rare that you have to add third-party repositories like that anyway. And on my system, the only third-party repositories that I have are Google and Spotify. That's it. But that's basically how that works. So we have taken a look at how to install, remove, and purge. I'm going to take a look at update here in just a second. But there's one thing that I wanted to show you. And that is that all of these things that we've installed from a PPA, we can now get to from a Deb file or a PPA, we can now get to from the software management tools like the Software Manager and Synaptic. So if you want to remove that piece of software, my mouse is going a little crazy there, and then you can open this up and you can remove it from here. Of course, I suggest using Synaptic because then you may purge everything. Now, things that you install from PPAs and downloaded Deb files. Well, PPAs, yes. Downloaded Deb files, no. They're not going to automatically get updated. So usually that kind of software has some sort of mechanism in it that will tell you an update is available. And then you go back to the web page, you download the updated Deb file, and just simply reinstall it. That's how it works. And it will upgrade it that way when you do it. So my suggestion is to use Deb files only when you can. If you can hook up a PPA, it's better because you're going to get your updates. Or actually sticking to the main repositories is probably the best way to go because then you know that the distribution is updating it. But like I said, sometimes the repositories don't have the most up-to-date software, or you might not be able to get it there. So let's talk about updating things because this is one of the greatest things about Linux. Other than the Deb files I just installed, the ones that don't hook up a repository like Google does, Google hooks up that repository so they can give you the latest Google Chrome updates. Everything that's installed on this system, as long as it comes from some sort of repository somewhere, is going to get updated when we update the entire system. And in Linux Mint, we got a great tool to do that. And that is the Update Manager. And it runs down here, and it will show you when updates are available for the system. The Linux Mint Update Manager also grades the updates. So the ones that are considered the safest are up top, and then as you go down from different places, it might be considered a less safe update. But pretty much whatever it shows you, you can install. And of course, on the latest version of Linux Mint, you can also have it automatically update your kernel, which is the next thing that I want to show you. The kernel is the part of the Linux operating, that is actually the heart of the Linux operating system. And versions of Linux Mint before 18, they didn't do this automatically, but you can do it manually. So let's go ahead and take a look here at the kernels that are available right now. And you see we get a big long list here. So what we need to do is, I want to see what kernel is loaded. And we'll go back to the top of the list. I just clicked on that. And we are running the recommended kernel. It is loaded. And for Linux Mint 17.3, that is still kernel 3.19, which is actually quite old at this point. And I would encourage you, if you're going to be installing Linux Mint, or if you're running it, to upgrade the kernel to a later version. Now, the latest Ubuntu kernel, which is available, let me make this a little bigger so we have more kernels to look at once. The latest Ubuntu kernel is 4.4.038 right there. And the only thing about that is, if you're running this on older hardware that has been running Linux Mint 17.3 quite well, you may find that moving from like the 4.2 series to the 4.4 series might introduce some instability, but actually I haven't had too big of a problem with it. Now, if you do have some instability, you can always uninstall whatever kernel you install. So to install a kernel, let's say we did want to install the very latest Ubuntu kernel. You just click on it, and then you can install the kernel. I'm going to cancel because it takes a little while for the kernel to compile. And then you would reboot the system, and then the system would be running off of the latest Linux kernel at that point. Now, if you had a problem with that kernel, then you would need to boot your system, and you would need to hold down the Shift key while it was booting, and then you could select the kernel in the grub menu. And so if you find that this is unstable or there's a problem, you can just roll back to the other kernel. Now, once you're back to that kernel, you can open up this kernel manager and then uninstall the later kernel that you put in, restart the system, and now you'll be on the kernel that you started out on. And yeah, that's kind of an advanced concept. If you are brand new to Linux and you don't understand much about kernels, just leave it alone. It is a security risk to run an old kernel, but it's also dangerous in that you might trash your system. Changing kernels can break certain things on your system, so proceed with caution, and you might want to do some research on updating the system kernel-wise later on. But with Linux Mint, if this tool is running in the background, you're going to be seeing your important updates, and any repository that's hooked up to the system, you are going to get updates on. So that's pretty cool. And so there you go. That is a basic look at updates. Actually, on my systems, I don't even use the application like this anymore. I just do it from a terminal because it's only a couple of commands. But like I said, we're not going to be doing terminal stuff in this video. Alright, so the last thing we have on the list is something that I'm not going to show you how to do, and that is compiling from source code, because I don't recommend it. But I do want to talk about it a little bit before we end this video, and that is because the reason why I don't recommend it is because it is extremely dangerous. As you look at our sources list here, the first option, distribution repositories, absolutely the safest way to get software on your machine. Probably not going to get a virus. It's not going to trash your system. You know it's going to work. Next up would be personal package archives and third-party repositories. If you don't trust the person who has put up that personal package archive or who runs that repository, you're taking a big risk by hooking it up to your system, because it is conceivable that you could get some sort of spyware or malware that would be slipped in with a program in that system. However, that really is not going to fly very long in the Linux world. If somebody did attempt to do that, believe me, they'd scream bloody murder, and you'd know about it if you follow anything that has to do with Linux. So I usually don't worry too much about it, but truthfully, I try and avoid PPAs and third-party repositories except for things that I actually really want. Next on the list, downloading a Deb file. Well, now that's a little bit more dangerous than the top two options there. because a Deb file is just a chunk of code that you're downloading on your machine, and when you install it, you're giving it root access to the system. So once again, you better trust the developer that's created that Deb file. If you're downloading Google Chrome, for instance, or if you're downloading TeamViewer or Ocean Audio or something like that, that's an application that's been around for a long time and it's cross-platform, they're probably all right. But do be very careful when you're dealing with Deb files. And finally, compiling from source code. Unfortunately, there are people out there who have programs that are available for Linux, and they claim that they are available for Linux, but they don't actually take the time to package the software to make it easy to install. They don't provide a Deb file, they don't put up a repository. No, what they do is they publish source code, which is the raw code that you need to make a program work. Well, source code needs to be compiled into machine language or assembly language so that the machine can actually run it. And that's what's in a Deb package, is that compiled software. It's ready to rock and roll. But you can get source code that is meant to run on Linux, and then you can use tools that are installed on your machine, and you can compile the program locally. Do not do this unless you know exactly what you're doing, because this is by far the least safe way to install software, because unless you can look through that source code yourself and know what that developer is doing, you have no clue what's in it. Also, they'll claim that it works on Ubuntu 14.04, for instance, and you'll try and install it on Linux Mint and it won't work because the systems are a little bit different. And 9 times out of 10, the instructions that they give you just don't work. I mean, it's pretty sad, actually. And then, even if you do manage to get the piece of software installed, that doesn't mean that you're going to get the dependencies you need to make it run. And compiling software locally on a machine, it can trash the system. You can do it. You can make it so that that piece of software doesn't work, and it might affect other parts of the system as well. So I strongly discourage doing this. And if you come across some web page somewhere that talks about this great piece of software, and they say, yes, it's available for Linux Mint and Ubuntu, great. If it's not being provided in a Deb package, or there's not a repository somewhere, don't do it, because that is a really lazy developer, and unfortunately, they think they're contributing something to the community when actually they're really not. They're causing a lot of problems for a lot of users out there. So if you are a developer and you happen to see this video, take the time to package your stuff in Deb files and RPM packages at least, and set up a repository if you can, so you can distribute your software. Compiling from source code, that can get people into trouble. So, I think we've pretty much covered everything we need to cover in this particular video, although I do have some closing thoughts. Look in your repositories first. See if you can find software that works for you there. And when you are searching software on the web, see if that person has a PPA. And also see if they have a Deb file before you start messing around with it. If it's source code, just absolutely walk away. And when you do find a pretty cool piece of software, before you download and install it, if it's not in an official repository, if it's not in a personal package repository, make sure that you look elsewhere on the web and see how people have reacted to that piece of software. Do as much research on it as you can, because you don't want to get yourself in trouble. It might hurt your system. It might open you up to viruses or vulnerabilities. So make sure that you do as much research on it as possible. So there you go. Now, I have a bonus for those of you who have watched this entire video, if you are a Linux Mint fan. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. This has nothing to do with software, but I was setting up this machine today, and I came across this, and I realized that I had never showed anybody this thing about Linux Mint before. So when you install Linux Mint for the first time and you open up Firefox, And it's probably going to take a little while to open because I had all that other stuff open, but I just want to show you what the page looks like. Anyway, when you open up Firefox, you notice that it automatically defaults to the Linux Mint homepage. There are also some other alterations that they make here. First of all, they block Google. It's not a search engine that's available in the drop-down. So you have to go in and you have to set that elsewhere. Also, there are some things that Linux Mint does here to increase their revenue, like ads that you get, those ads that showed up in a Yahoo search. And I mean, I understand that Linux Mint wants to figure out ways to get other revenue streams, and I support them that way. But there's some things I don't like about the way they do their browser. So how does this work? When you install Linux Mint, let's open up a terminal here. Now, I'm opening up a terminal to show you something, not to install software. Just want to show you this. Okay, so when you install Linux Mint, there is a directory in here that what it does is it provides basic installation configuration files for the desktop. Okay, so that would be cd etc skel. Okay, let's go there and we list the storage. You don't see anything in there because all of these are dot files that are in here. So we're going to do ls a, and now you see that we have .mozilla in here. When a new user profile is created, this pre-configured Mozilla settings profile is moved into the directory. And that has all of the modifications. So, if you install your Linux Mint and you want just a clean Firefox to start with, without any modifications in it, I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So let me open my terminal back up. I shouldn't have closed it. When I'm working in virtual machines, I'm always fast on the trigger to close things just to conserve memory. So let me make that a little smaller. Okay, so if I go to the home directory here, which we're already in, and we're going to do A. Okay, I'm going to do that right. Thank you. Okay, you see that we have a folder in here called .mozilla. Let me make sure nothing's open. I don't want to... Well, I've got the downloads folder open, but that's okay. Alright, so what we're going to do, we need to remove that before we open Firefox. Do not do this with Firefox running. And I'm going to equals, not equals, but -r, which makes it recursive, and then we're going to get rid of .mozilla. Just autofill that. Now that folder is gone. See, we don't have any Mozilla folder in there, which means that all of that crap that Linux Mint did to it isn't there. So now, if we open up Firefox, it's going to ask us whether we want to import from anywhere else. I'm going to tell it, no, don't import anything. Next. There you go. It is Firefox as it comes from the Mozilla Foundation. There may be some other modifications that they do, but as far as just getting a standard Firefox, this is how you do it. And by the way, I think this works the same way in Ubuntu as well, but don't hold me to that, because usually what I do when I install a new system for myself is I will go in and move my own .mozilla profile into the system. So I will move that directory in there that already has all the configurations for my Firefox regardless of where it is. But if you just want to start out with a clean Firefox and you don't want to have all of those Linux Mint things going on, this is how you would do it. We may not have Google right off the bat here, but let's see what we do have. So I'm just going to do a search for htop. See which page it opens. Yeah, so you can't get rid of it 100%, but at least you don't have the home page there. You can go through and do some other things to it. But I thought that was kind of interesting. And there's a security reason for doing this as well. And that is that basically, Linux Mint is making every Linux Mint user use exactly the same Mozilla profile. So let me show you this. So let me go ahead and show hidden files. Okay. So go to Firefox. So let's go ahead and split this. And click on File System. Etsy. We'll find Skell. Alright, so there's .mozilla, Firefox. And now you notice that for this profile default here, that is what every user who is going to be on this system, that's what it's going to be. Firefox generates kind of a bunch of gobbledygook there. So it's kind of a security risk, Linux Mint, but anyhow, I just thought I'd show you that. If you want a cleaner Firefox when you install Linux Mint, you can. And then, of course, you can choose to change your search engine in Firefox. Also, I think that they have plugins in here. Let me see. Now, I don't have any extensions. I got plenty of plugins, though. Yeah, so that got rid of that plugin, but you will need to go in here and configure Firefox to find a search engine, which search engine it's going to use. You can look up how to do that. Anyway, gang, I just thought you guys would like to see that. Just a little bonus at the end of this video for you more advanced Linux Mint fans. I thought I would throw that in there somewhere. And we've kind of rambled on long enough, haven't we? Let's go ahead and shut down this here Linux Mint machine and say goodbye to it. Thank you for watching this rather long, rambly video. I do appreciate it. And check out freedompenguin.com for lots of great stories about Linux. Got one coming up there from me pretty soon. Also on easylinux.com, you can find out how I can help you get started with Linux. And you will also want to check out Easy Linux on Facebook. And if you do, would you please give it a like? I certainly would appreciate it. So thank you very much for watching. We will do it again soon.